Do you know who she is? The words hung in the air like a grenade with a pin already pulled. Commander Victor Okonkwo stood before 7 SEALs in his office at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, and not one of them could answer. 3 days ago, these men had been laughing. 3 days ago, they had called her a joke. Now Senior Chief Brennan Dalworth watched his 20-year career evaporate in the silence between one heartbeat and the next. She stood behind the commander. Same woman they had mocked. Same woman whose meal they had spilled. Same woman they had sabotaged and demeaned in front of 315 service members. But she was wearing a different name tape now. Not Reyes. The tape on her chest read, Okonkwo-Reyes. Clear out your lockers, the commander said. Every one of you. Dalworth opened his mouth to protest, but the commander's eyes stopped him cold. Those eyes belonged to a man who had spent 28 years in naval special warfare. A man who had buried friends in 6 countries. A man who had just watched his daughter be humiliated by men who wore the same anchor he did. There would be no appeal. There would be no explanation. There would only be consequences. 3 days earlier, Petty Officer Second Class Amara Reyes stepped off the transport at Coronado with a sea bag over her shoulder and something to prove. The California sun hit her face as she crossed the tarmac, as she allowed herself exactly 3 seconds to appreciate the view before her expression returned to neutral. She was not here for the scenery. Before we go any further, I want to know where you are watching from. Drop a comment and let me know your location. Maybe you have seen situations where someone had to prove themselves against impossible odds. Maybe you know what it feels like to be underestimated. Wherever you are, stay with me, because what happened over these 3 days at Coronado changed everything. The Joint Forces Maritime Assault Drill brought together the best from every branch. SEALs from Naval Special Warfare, Marines from Camp Pendleton, Rangers from Fort Benning. For 3 days, they would compete in scenarios designed to push them past breaking. Amara had requested assignment to this drill specifically. She had also made one other request, and it had cost her more than anyone would ever know. Do not tell them who I am. Her father had agreed. Commander Victor Okonkwo, legendary SEAL and commanding officer of Naval Special Warfare Training, had given his word. His adopted daughter would face this drill like any other sailor. No protection, no special treatment. She would earn her place or she would fail, and either way, it would be on her own terms. The name tape on her uniform read Reyes. Her birth mother's name. The name she had carried before a grieving SEAL found a 6-year-old girl in a Manila orphanage and gave her a family. She spotted the competition teams assembling near the Maritime Operations Building. 7 SEALs stood apart from the others, their body language broadcasting exactly what they thought of this joint exercise. Amara recognized the type. She had encountered men like them in the Marines before she had cross-rated to Navy. Men who measured worth by the insignia on your chest and the anatomy between your legs. The tallest of them, a senior chief with a jaw like a cinder block, noticed her approach. His eyes swept over her once, dismissed her, and returned to his conversation. That, Amara thought, is going to be a problem. She reported to the check-in station where a Master Chief with silver streaking her dark hair reviewed her orders. Master Chief Elena Castellanos. Amara had heard the name. 23 years in, highly decorated, respected by everyone who had ever served under her. Castellanos looked at the paperwork, then at Amara. Something flickered in her expression. Recognition, maybe, or just curiosity about the supply sailor who had volunteered for a combat drill. You requested support and logistics assignment, Castellanos said. Your record shows Marine Scout Sniper qualification. Combat de promo. Commendations. Why are you starting at the bottom? Amara met her eyes. Because the bottom is where you prove what you are really made of, Master Chief. Castellanos held her gaze for a long moment, then stamped the orders. Barracks assignment is Building 7. Drill brief at 0600 tomorrow. She paused. Watch yourself around the SEAL teams. Some of them have strong opinions about who belongs here. Am I schuldig? I have opinions too, Master Chief. I just keep them quieter. She was halfway to the barracks when a voice cut across the courtyard. Hey, supply girl. Amara turned. The senior chief was walking toward her with two of his team, flanking him like wingmen on a strike mission. The patches on their uniforms identified them as competition squad conquistadors. The senior chief stopped 3 feet away, looking down at her from his 6'3" height. "Dalworth," he said, tapping his chest. "I run the team that is going to win this drill. You're going to be fetching our ammunition and filling our canteens." Amara said nothing. 3 days, Dalworth continued. "That is how long before you quit. Women always quit. It is not an insult. It is just reality. The smart ones figured out early." The men behind him smiled. One of them, a petty officer first class with a neck like a fire hydrant, cracked his knuckles. Amara looked at all 3 of them, looked at the certainty in their eyes, looked at the years of assumptions baked into their expressions. "I appreciate the welcome, Senior Chief," she said. "I will try not to disappoint you." She turned and walked toward the barracks without waiting for a response. Behind her, she heard Dalworth laugh. 3 days, he called after her. "Mark my words." Amara kept walking. She did not look back, but if Dalworth had been paying closer attention, he might have noticed something. Her hands are not shaking. Her stride did not falter. She walked like someone who had heard those words before, in places far more dangerous than a training base in California. She walked like someone who had already decided how this would end. The barracks smelled like decades of sweat and discipline. Amara found her assigned rack, stowed her gear, and lay down without bothering to meet her neighbors. She had learned a long time ago that first impressions in military housing meant nothing. What mattered was what happened when the pressure started. Sleep came in fragments. She dreamed of her father pinning her Navy insignia on the day she completed cross-rating, the pride in his eyes, the words he had whispered so no one else could hear. "You never needed my name, Amara. You just needed the chance to prove it." 0530 came fast. Amara was dressed and out of the barracks before most of the other participants had finished their first cup of coffee. The Maritime Operations building loomed against the pre-dawn sky, its windows already lit with activity. Inside, the drill coordinator was setting up briefing materials. Lieutenant Commander Roshan Mehta moved with the efficiency of someone who had run 100 exercises and intended to run 100 more. He glanced up as Amara entered. Early, he observed. "Habit," she replied. Mehta studied her for a moment. "Reyes, you're the one who volunteered for logistics despite being combat qualified." He tapped his tablet. "Interesting choice." Amara did not explain. She had learned that explanations invited arguments, and she was not here to argue. She was here to demonstrate. The room filled over the next 20 minutes. Marines in their digital patterns, Rangers in their multicam, and the SEALs, entering last like they owned the building and everyone in it. Dalworth's team took positions at the front, sprawling in their chairs with the casual arrogance of men who had never been told no. Amara stood near the back, watching everything. The briefing covered 3 days of escalating scenarios. Day 1 focused on maritime infiltration. Day 2 would test urban assault capabilities. Day 3 culminated in a full compound assault requiring all units to work together. Points would be awarded for speed, accuracy, and tactical innovation. The winning team would receive commendations and priority consideration for advanced training billets. Dalworth's hand went up. "What about support personnel? Do they count against our scores, or are they just dead weight we have to carry?" Several people shifted uncomfortably. Mehta's expression remained neutral. Support personnel are evaluated separately on their contributions to team success. They can add points. They cannot subtract them. Dalworth nodded, as if this confirmed something he already knew. He did not look at Amara, but she felt the message anyway. "You're not one of us. You never will be." The first exercise began at 0700. Maritime Infiltration. Teams would launch from rigid-hull inflatable boats, navigate to a simulated hostile shore, and establish a beachhead without being detected by drone surveillance. Amara was assigned to ammunition and equipment staging. She worked with quiet efficiency, ensuring each team had exactly what they needed, positioned exactly where they needed it. The work was not glamorous. It was not heroic, but she did it perfectly because perfect was the only standard she recognized. Midway through the morning, she noticed a problem. A young Army private, barely old enough to shave, was struggling with a malfunctioning equipment harness. The release mechanism had jammed, and he was going to miss his team's launch window if he could not get it fixed in the next 2 minutes. His face showed the particular panic of someone who knew they were about to fail publicly. Amara crossed to him without being asked. "Hold still," she said. Her fingers found the jam in 3 seconds. A bent retention pin that had caught on the internal webbing. She produced a multi-tool from her pocket, made 2 precise adjustments, and the harness released. The private stared at her. "How did you know how to do that?" Amara was already walking away. "Same thing happened to me in Fallujah," she said over her shoulder. "Except I had people shooting at me at the time." The private made his launch window with 30 seconds to spare. His team completed the infiltration successfully. Amara returned to her staging duties as if nothing had happened. But someone had noticed. Chief Warrant Officer Grace Thibodeau was a combat medic with the Army Rangers, and she had been watching the equipment station since 0600. She had seen the private's panic. She had seen Amara's intervention, and she had seen the way Amara moved, the way she assessed the problem before she even reached the private. That was not logistics training, Thibodeau said, falling into step beside Amara. That was muscle memory, combat muscle memory. Amara glanced at her. "Just helping out." Thibodeau smiled. She was maybe 15 years older than Amara, with the kind of face that had seen enough to stop being surprised by anything. "I know a shooter when I see one," she said. "Whatever you're doing in logistics, it is not where you belong." "Maybe I'm exactly where I belong," Amara replied. "Maybe I'm just waiting for everyone else to figure that out." Thibodeau laughed, a short, sharp sound of genuine amusement. "I like you, Reyes. If anyone gives you trouble, find me." By noon, the first day's exercises were showing clear results. Dalworth's team had dominated the maritime infiltration, posting the fastest time and the cleanest insertion. They were celebrating in the staging area when Amara walked past with a crate of supplies. Morrissey, the thick-necked petty officer first class, stuck out his foot. Not enough to trip her, just enough to make her stumble. Amara sidestepped it without breaking stride, but the message was clear. "Watch yourself, supply girl," Morrissey said. "A lot of heavy equipment around here. Accidents happen." Amara set down her crate. She looked at Morrissey, then at Dalworth, then at the rest of the team. None of them looked away. "Thank you for the warning," she said. "I will keep that in mind." The afternoon passed with more exercises and more domination by Dalworth's team. They were good. Amara could admit that. They moved together like they shared a single nervous system, anticipating each other's actions, covering each other's weaknesses. A decade of training and deployment had forged them into something close to perfect. But perfect was not the same as honorable. Evening meal came at 1800. The dining facility was crowded with exhausted personnel, refueling for the next day. Amara collected her tray and found an empty table near the wall. She had just started eating when a shadow fell across her food. Dalworth stood over her with his own tray in hand. Morrissey and a petty officer second class named Holloway flanked him. "This table is reserved," Dalworth said. Amara looked around. There were no signs, no markers, just empty seats. "I do not see a reservation," she said. Dalworth smiled. It was not a friendly expression. He shifted his tray slightly and then tipped it. Mashed potatoes and gravy cascaded onto Amara's meal, onto her uniform, onto the table. "Oh," Dalworth said. "Clumsy me." His team laughed. Other diners looked away, unwilling to get involved. Amara did not move. She sat there with gravy dripping down her chest, looking up at the man who had just humiliated her in front of 50 people. She did not yell. She did not cry. She did not give him anything. "Accidents happen," she said, echoing Morrissey's earlier words. "Right, Senior Chief." Something flickered in Dalworth's eyes. Annoyance, maybe. He had expected a reaction. Tears or anger or surrender. Instead, he got calm. He walked away without another word. His team followed, still laughing. Amara sat alone in her ruined meal, and across the dining facility, Master Chief Castellanos watched with an expression that was very hard to read. Later that night, Castellanos found her outside the barracks. You could file a complaint, the Master Chief said. What Dalworth did was clear harassment. Amara looked at the stars over Coronado. I do not need complaints, Master Chief. I need them to see. See what? Amara turned to face her. The truth. About themselves. And about me. Castellanos studied her for a long moment. In 23 years, she had learned to read people. She could see fear and courage and everything in between. But this young woman was different. There was something under the surface. Something familiar. You remind me of someone, Castellanos said finally. Amara's expression did not change. Maybe you were just seeing things, Master Chief. She walked back into the barracks, and Castellanos stood alone in the darkness, wondering why a supply sailor moved like a sniper and talked like someone who had already won a war no one else could see. Day one was not finished with Amara yet. The combat training tank was a massive indoor facility designed to simulate maritime combat in controlled conditions. Waves could be generated at varying intensities. Lighting could shift from daylight to total darkness. Obstacles could be deployed and reconfigured between exercises. It was where SEALs learned to fight in the water, and tonight it was where the Joint Forces drill would test close-quarters combat under amphibious conditions. Amara arrived at 2000 hours to prep equipment for the night exercise. The tank smelled like chlorine and exertion, and the humidity clung to her skin within seconds of entering. She ignored the discomfort. She had trained in worse. Dalworth's team was already warming up at the far end of the facility. They moved through combat drills with the fluid precision of men who had practiced these movements 10,000 times. Morrissey and Holloway sparred while Dalworth observed, calling out corrections that his men absorbed without breaking rhythm. They were impressive. Amara could admit that without resentment. Excellence was excellence, regardless of who demonstrated it. She focused on her own tasks, checking flotation devices, verifying weapon simulations were properly calibrated, ensuring safety personnel had clear sight lines to all combat zones. The work was invisible but essential, and she performed it with the same attention she had given to every mission in her career. A voice interrupted her concentration. Petty Officer Reyes. She turned to find Holloway approaching. Unlike Dalworth's blunt aggression or Morrissey's physical menace, Holloway carried himself with an intellectual superiority that announced itself in every gesture. He was the team's tactical specialist, and he wanted everyone to know it. I have been reviewing the personnel files for this drill, Holloway said. Yours is interesting. Amara continued checking equipment. Is that so? Combat deployments with the Marines. Scout sniper qualification. And yet here you are, counting ammunition and checking life vests. He tilted his head. Either you washed out of something, or you are hiding from something. Which is it? Amara met his eyes. Maybe I just like counting ammunition. Holloway smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Let me ask you something tactical. You are approaching a hostile compound. 2 entry points. North entrance has minimal cover, but direct access to the objective. East entrance has superior cover, but requires clearing 3 additional rooms. Enemy strength unknown. Which do you choose? It was a test. Amara recognized it immediately. Holloway wanted to expose her as incompetent, to prove that her record was exaggerated or fraudulent. She considered refusing to answer, but something in her resisted the idea of backing down. Neither, she said. Holloway blinked. Excuse me. Both options assume the enemy does not know you are coming. In reality, they always know. I would create a 3rd entry point. Breach through an unmonitored wall or window. The element of surprise is worth more than cover or access. For a moment, Holloway said nothing. His expression shifted through surprise, reassessment, and finally dismissal. Textbook answer, he said. Anyone could have memorized that. He walked away before she could respond. Amara watched him rejoin his team, watch him lean close to Dalworth and whisper something. Both men glanced in her direction. She returned to her work. Let them talk. Word were not weapons. Not yet. The night exercise began at 2100. Teams rotated through combat scenarios in the tank, while evaluators scored their performance. Amara moved between stations, resupplying and supporting as needed. She stayed in the background, invisible, exactly as expected, until the equipment failure. It happened during the third rotation. A simulated weapon misfired during a close-quarters drill, sending a spray of marking rounds into an unprotected area. 3 participants went down, clutching their faces and arms where the rounds had struck at unsafe velocity. The exercise halted. Medical personnel rushed forward. Chaos erupted as evaluators tried to determine what had gone wrong. Amara was closest to the malfunction. While others scrambled, she moved to the weapon, checked the calibration mechanism, and found the problem in under 5 seconds. Someone had adjusted the pressure setting beyond safe parameters. The rounds had fired at nearly twice their intended velocity. She made the correction, verified the fix, and signaled to the safety officer that the weapon was now properly calibrated. The entire process took less than 30 seconds. Lieutenant Commander Mehta appeared beside her. "How did you know what to look for?" Amara handed him the weapon. Same malfunction happened during a training exercise in Camp Lejeune 4 years ago. One Marine lost an eye. After that, we all learned to recognize the signs. Mehta studied the weapon, then studied her. "You just prevented 3 medical evacuations with a 30-second repair." "I just did my job, sir." She walked away before he could ask more questions. Behind her, she heard Mehta speaking to one of the evaluators. Something about her performance metrics. Something about potential. She did not let herself hope. Hope was dangerous. The exercise resumed, and Dalworth's team continued their domination. By midnight, they had posted the highest scores in every category. The Conquistadors were living up to their name. As the facility emptied, Amara found herself alone in the equipment bay, securing the last of the gear. Footsteps echoed behind her. She did not turn around. She already knew who it was. "Lucky catch with that weapon," Dalworth said. "Almost looked like you knew what you were doing." Amara finished locking the storage case before facing him. He stood in the doorway with Morrissey and a younger SEAL she had not interacted with yet. The patches identified him as Petty Officer 3rd Class Danny Vance. Unlike the others, Vance was not smiling. His expression held something that might have been discomfort. "I know exactly what I am doing, Senior Chief," Amara said. "That is why I am still here." Dalworth stepped closer. The doorway was the only exit, and his team blocked it completely. "Here's what I think, Reyes. I think you got lucky with some deployments. I think someone inflated your record to fill a diversity quota. And I think you're going to break before this drill is over. You are entitled to your opinion. It is not an opinion. It is a prediction." He smiled that cold smile again. Day 2 is urban assault. Lots of moving parts. Lots of places where someone who does not belong could get hurt. Morrissey cracked his knuckles. "Accidents happen," he said. "Remember." Amara looked at all 3 of them. Dalworth radiating contempt. Morrissey hungry for confrontation. And Vance, the youngest, who would not meet her eyes. "I remember everything," she said quietly. "Every word, every action, everything." Something in her tone made Vance look up. For just a moment, their eyes met, and Amara saw something she recognized. Doubt, the kind that came from following orders you knew were wrong. Then Dalworth laughed, and the moment broke. "Get some sleep, supply girl. Tomorrow is going to be a long day." They left her alone in the equipment bay. Amara stood motionless until their footsteps faded completely. Above her, in the observation gallery that overlooked the combat training tank, a figure stood in the shadows. Commander Victor Okonkwo had watched the entire exchange. His hands gripped the railing hard enough to turn his knuckles white. He had made a promise to his daughter. No interference, no protection. But promises, he was learning, became harder to keep when you watch your child face wolves alone. Day 2 began with rain. It swept across Coronado in sheets, turning the training grounds into a maze of mud and standing water. Most personnel complained. Amara welcomed it. Rain meant reduced visibility. Reduced visibility meant equalizing conditions. And equalizing conditions meant that skill would matter more than reputation. The urban assault simulation was scheduled for 0800. Teams would clear a mock compound designed to replicate hostile architecture from a dozen different conflict zones. Windows at unexpected angles. Doors that open the wrong way. hallways that led nowhere. The facility had been built by veterans who understood that real combat never followed blueprints. Amara reported to the staging area at 0700. Her assignment placed her at the ammunition resupply point, positioned behind the main assault lanes. It was the safest location in the exercise. It was also the most useless. Dalworth had made the assignment personally. She accepted it without protest. Protests would only confirm what they already believed about her. Instead, she studied the compound layout during the briefing, memorizing entry points and sight lines that she would never be asked to use. The exercise launched on schedule. Teams moved in rotating waves, each one attempting to clear the compound faster and cleaner than the last. Dalworth's conquistadors drew the fourth slot, giving them time to observe and adapt to the challenges that had slowed earlier teams. Amara watched from her resupply station as the first three teams encountered the same problem. A concealed position on the second floor provided overlapping fields of fire that covered both primary entry points. Teams either took casualties breaching through the kill zone or wasted critical time finding alternate routes. She saw the solution immediately. A drainage access on the east side of the compound led to an unmonitored maintenance corridor. From there, a team could flank the concealed position and eliminate it before the main assault began. It was exactly the kind of third option she had described to Holloway the night before. None of the teams found it. When the conquistadors launched their assault, they did something different. Instead of hitting the primary entries, they split into two elements. One drew fire from the concealed position, while the other circled to a breach point that was not in the original briefing materials. Dalworth had found the drainage access. Amara felt a flash of grudging respect. Whatever else he was, the man knew tactics. The conquistadors cleared the compound in record time. As they emerged victorious, Dalworth caught her watching. He pointed two fingers at his eyes, then at her. "I see you," the gesture said. "I know what you were thinking, and I'm still better." The morning rotation continued until noon. Amara resupplied teams, tracked ammunition expenditure, and maintained perfect records of every round fired. It was exactly the work she had been assigned. It was also exactly the work that kept her invisible. During the lunch break, Thibodeau found her eating alone behind the supply shed. Hiding or thinking, the chief warrant officer asked. Both, Amara admitted. Thibodeau sat down beside her, uninvited but not unwelcome. "I watched you during the morning exercises. You were tracking the compound layout, calculating angles. You saw that drainage access before anyone else did." Amara said nothing. Dalworth saw it too, Thibodeau continued. "But only after 3 teams failed. You saw it during the briefing, before the first team even launched." She paused. "Who trained you, Reyes?" "The Marines." Thibodeau shook her head. "I have worked with plenty of Marines. Good ones. Great ones. None of them read a battlefield like you do. That kind of vision comes from somewhere specific." Amara looked at her. "Some questions do not have answers, Chief. At least not answers I can give." "Fair enough." Thibodeau stood. "Just know that when whatever you are hiding comes out, I am on your side. Some of us can recognize the real thing when we see it." She walked away, leaving Amara alone with her cold meal and her colder calculations. The afternoon exercise resumed at 1400. This time, the scenario shifted. Teams would work together to secure multiple objectives simultaneously, testing coordination and communication under pressure. Amara was reassigned to a forward observation post. The position gave her a clear view of the primary assault lanes, but no active role in the operation. She was a spectator in a game she had been born to play. The assault began badly. Teams struggled to coordinate, their radio communications overlapping and confusing. Objectives fell behind schedule. Evaluators marked deductions on their tablets. And then Amara saw the ambush. The scenario designers had hidden a secondary enemy position that activated only when teams reached a specific checkpoint. It was a trap designed to punish overconfidence and reward situational awareness. None of the assaulting teams had detected it. In 30 seconds, the ambush would trigger. The lead element would take simulated casualties. The exercise would descend into chaos. Amara was not supposed to have a radio, but the observation post had an emergency channel for safety communications. She keyed the handset. All elements, this is observation post 7. Enemy position detected, grid reference 479er. Recommend immediate suppression before checkpoint breach. The channel went silent for a heartbeat. Then Dalworth's voice crackled through. Who the hell is this? OP7 is supply personnel. Disregard that transmission. The lead element continued forward. The ambush triggered. Simulated fire erupted from the concealed position. The lead element went down, their vests flashing red to indicate casualties. The exercise dissolved into exactly the chaos Amara had predicted. In the aftermath, Lieutenant Commander Mehta pulled her aside. You broke protocol, he said. Observation posts do not have tactical authority. I reported a threat through the appropriate safety channel, Amara replied. The decision to act on that report was not mine. Mehta studied her for a long moment. Your warning was accurate. If the lead element had listened, they would have avoided 6 casualties. But they did not listen. No. He glanced toward where Dalworth was arguing with an evaluator. They did not listen. Because of who gave the warning. He walked away without another word. That night, Amara returned to her rack to find it empty. Not empty as in unoccupied. Empty as in stripped. Her sea bag was gone. Her uniforms were gone. Every piece of gear she had brought to Coronado had vanished. On her bare mattress lay a single piece of paper. 2 words written in block letters. Go home. Amara stood motionless, staring at the note. Outside, rain continued to fall on Coronado. Somewhere on this base, 7 men were laughing at her. She had 4 hours until the next exercise. No gear, no uniform, no options. At least, that was what they wanted her to believe. Amara did not panic. Panic was a luxury she had surrendered years ago in a firefight outside Fallujah when her spotter took a round through the throat and she had to finish the mission alone. She had been 22 years old. She had completed the mission. She had carried her spotter's body 3 miles to extraction. After that, a missing sea bag was nothing. She sat on the bare mattress and considered her options. Report the theft to base security. File a formal complaint. Demand an investigation that would take days she did not have and produce results that would come too late. Or, she could solve the problem herself. Amara checked her watch. 2100. The next exercise launched at 0100. For hours to acquire gear, uniform, and equipment sufficient to complete a night navigation course through the Coronado obstacle fields. She had worked with less. The first stop was the base exchange. Closed at this hour, but Amara had memorized the emergency supply protocols during her initial briefing. Every training command maintained contingency stocks for exactly this kind of situation. Lost gear, damaged equipment. The military understood that problems arose and solutions needed to exist. She found the duty officer at the administrative building and explained her situation without mentioning sabotage. Equipment malfunction, gear contamination, a story that was technically false but operationally irrelevant. The duty officer processed her request with the bored efficiency of someone who had heard every excuse and believed none of them. 30 minutes later, Amara had a basic uniform set and standard issue boots. Not her gear, not her fit, but functional. The tactical equipment was harder. Night navigation required specific tools. Compass, map case, light discipline gear, hydration system. None of it was available through emergency supply. All of it was locked in team storage areas that she could not access. Amara stood in the rain outside the equipment building, calculating her remaining options. She could attempt the course with insufficient gear and accept the performance penalty. She could withdraw from the exercise and confirm every assumption Dalworth had made about her. Or she could find another way. A voice cut through the darkness. You look like someone who needs a friend. Thibodeau emerged from the shadows, an equipment bag slung over her shoulder. The chief warrant officer moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had anticipated this exact moment. Word travels fast on a small base, Thibodeau said. One of my rangers saw your rack get stripped. He was too far away to stop it, but close enough to identify the men responsible. Amara felt something loosen in her chest. Who? Thibodeau shook her head. Does not matter right now. What matters is that you have 3 hours until the night NAV course, and I happen to have a complete backup kit that nobody is using. She held out the bag. Amara took it. Why, she asked. Because I have been where you are, Thibodeau replied. Not the same situation, but the same feeling. Alone against a system that wants you to fail. Someone help me then. I'm helping you now. That is how it works. Amara opened the bag. Everything she needed was inside. Compass, maps, tactical light, even a hydration bladder already filled with water. This is marine issue, she said quietly. Thibodeau smiled. I have friends in every branch. Gear is gear. Results are what matter. For a moment, Amara could not speak. The kindness was unexpected. The solidarity was overwhelming. She had come to Coronado expecting to prove herself alone. She had not anticipated finding allies. Thank you, she managed. Do not thank me yet, Thibodeau said. Thank me when you finish that course with a time that makes Dalworth choke on his own assumptions. She disappeared back into the rain, leaving Amara with borrowed gear and renewed purpose. The night navigation course launched at 0100 under a moonless sky. Teams of 3 moved through the obstacle fields, navigating by compass and memory through terrain designed to disorient and exhaust. It was the kind of exercise that revealed character more than capability. Amara was assigned to a team with 2 Army specialists who had barely spoken to her during the entire drill. They accepted her presence without enthusiasm and her borrowed gear without comment. The course was brutal. 8 miles of hills, water obstacles, and deliberate misdirection. Checkpoints were hidden in locations that required both precision navigation and creative problem-solving. Most teams would finish in 4 to 5 hours. The best might break 3.5. Dalworth's team set out 15 minutes ahead of Amara's group. She watched them disappear into the darkness with the easy confidence of men who knew they would win. 2 hours into the course, Amara's team hit a problem. The 3rd checkpoint should have been at the base of a ravine, but the ravine was flooded from the day's rain. Waist-deep water stretched across their planned route, cold and dark and potentially dangerous. One of the specialists wanted to find another path. The other wanted to push through and risk the crossing. Amara studied the terrain. There, she said, pointing to a narrow ridge that paralleled the ravine. It adds 400 meters, but we stay dry and maintain our pace. The specialists exchanged glances. One of them shrugged. Your call, Reyes. They followed her route. The ridge was solid. The checkpoint appeared exactly where her navigation predicted. They had lost 3 minutes, but avoided a potentially mission-ending water crossing. By the 4th hour, Amara's team had closed the gap on the leaders. Her navigation was flawless. Her pace was relentless. The specialists, initially skeptical, had begun deferring to her judgment on every terrain decision. They crossed the finish line at 0447, 3 hours and 47 minutes. Second fastest time of the night. Dalworth's team had finished 8 minutes earlier. As Amara caught her breath at the finish area, Dalworth approached. His face was unreadable. Good time, he said, for someone using borrowed gear. Amara met his eyes. Gear does not determine outcome, Senior Chief. Character does. Something flickered across his face. Anger, maybe, or something closer to recognition. Day 3 is the compound assault, he said. Full integration. All units working together. Nowhere to hide. Nowhere to run. He leaned closer, dropping his voice so only she could hear. Whatever game you are playing, it ends tomorrow. He walked away. His team followed. Amara stood alone at the finish line, rain dripping from her borrowed gear, and felt the weight of everything that was coming. Tomorrow would be the final test. Tomorrow would be the moment when all the pressure, all the sabotage, all the carefully maintained silence would reach its breaking point. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. The screen showed a single photo. Her and her father at her Navy graduation. His arm around her shoulders. His pride visible even in a frozen image. One word escaped her lips, soft as a prayer. Dad. She had wanted to prove herself without his name. She had wanted to earn respect that belonged to her alone. But standing in the darkness, stripped of everything except borrowed kindness and stubborn will, she understood something she had been avoiding. Some battles could not be won alone, and some truths could not stay hidden forever. Day 3 dawned clear and cold. The rain had moved on overnight, leaving Coronado scrubbed clean and gleaming under a pale winter sun. It was the kind of morning that promised nothing and threatened everything. Amara woke at 0500, her body aching from the night navigation course, but her mind already running through scenarios. The compound assault was the culmination of everything. All units working together, all skills tested simultaneously, all pretenses stripped away. She dressed in the borrowed uniform that Thibodeau had provided, checking each piece of gear with the methodical care of someone who had learned that small failures became fatal ones. Everything was functional. Everything was ready. Everything except the truth. The pre-assault briefing assembled all participants in the main auditorium at 0600. 315 service members filled the seats, representing the finest operators from every branch. SEALs and Marines and Rangers and specialists of every variety all gathered for the final test. Commander Victor Okonkwo stood at the podium. Amara had known he would be there. She had prepared herself for the sight of him. But preparation and reality were different things. Seeing her father in his dress uniform, commander's insignia gleaming, addressing the assembled warriors as their ultimate authority, created a pressure in her chest that no amount of training could ease. His eyes swept the room as he spoke. Objectives, expectations, standards. The words flowed with the practiced ease of a man who had given 1,000 briefings. And then, for just a moment, his gaze found hers. Nothing visible changed. No recognition flickered across his features. To anyone watching, it was just a commander scanning his troops. But Amara felt the weight of that look like a physical thing. Pride, concern, and something that might have been an apology. I kept my promise, his eyes seemed to say. I'm still keeping it. But this is harder than I imagined. She gave him nothing in return. No acknowledgement. No signal. Just the blank attentiveness of a sailor listening to her commanding officer. The briefing concluded with team assignments. The compound assault would require coordinated action across multiple objectives. Fire teams, support elements, medical stations, command and control. Amara was assigned to perimeter security, the outermost position, the role furthest from the action. Dalworth had made the assignment. Of course he had. The assault launched at 0800. The compound was a sprawling complex that simulated a hostile stronghold. Multiple buildings, defensive positions, simulated enemy forces programmed to respond with increasing aggression as the assault progressed. It was designed to test everything from individual marksmanship to large unit coordination. Amara took her position on the eastern perimeter, 300 meters from the nearest assault element. Her job was to monitor for flanking attempts and report any enemy movement beyond the primary engagement zone. It was important work. It was also designed to keep her as far from the action as possible. She settled into her position and waited. The first hour passed with minimal activity. Radio traffic crackled with reports from the assault teams. Objectives fell one by one. Dalworth's conquistadors led the advance, their coordination flawless, their execution precise. And then the scenario shifted. Enemy reinforcements activated from a position that the assault planners had not anticipated. Simulated hostiles poured from a concealed bunker on the eastern edge of the compound, directly between Amara's perimeter position and the main assault force. She was cut off, alone, and directly in the path of an enemy counterattack. The radio exploded with confused transmissions. Teams reported contact from unexpected directions. The assault's momentum shattered as units scrambled to respond to the new threat. Amara assessed the situation in seconds. The enemy position was oriented toward the main assault force. They had not yet detected her location. She had clear sight lines to their command element, and she had the skills to do something about it. She was not supposed to engage. Perimeter security meant observation and reporting. Her job was to call on the threat and let others handle it. But others were pinned down. Others were taking casualties. And the enemy command element was right there, exposed, within her capability to neutralize. She made her decision. Amara moved from her position with the silent efficiency of someone who had done this 100 times in places where the bullets were real. Cover to cover, shadow to shadow, closing the distance while the enemy focused on targets they considered more dangerous. She reached a support position 40 meters from the enemy command element. Perfect angle. Clear shot. No obstacles. Her hands found the simulation rifle she had been issued. A training weapon, but configured to match the ballistics of a live system. She had qualified expert on this platform. She had qualified expert on every platform. 3 targets. 3 shots. 3 seconds. She exhaled slowly, found her center, and fired. The simulation system registered 3 command element kills in rapid succession. The enemy counterattack, suddenly leaderless, fell into disarray. Assault teams capitalized on the confusion, pushing forward to secure objectives that had seemed lost moments before. The radio traffic shifted from chaos to triumph. Who made those shots? Someone demanded. Who took out the command element? Silence. Then a voice Amara did not recognize. Eastern Perimeter. Someone on the Eastern Perimeter just ended that counterattack single-handed. More silence. Then Dalworth. Eastern Perimeter is supply personnel. There must be a mistake. But there was no mistake. The simulation system had logged everything. Position, timing, shot placement, evidence that could not be disputed or dismissed. Across the compound, teams were staring at their tactical displays. 315 service members watching data that told an impossible story. A supply sailor on perimeter duty had just executed a tactical intervention that turned the entire assault. In the Command Observation Center, Master Chief Castellanos pulled up the personnel file she had been studying for 2 days. The adoption records, the Marine Service Jacket, the sniper qualification, the sealed commendations from operations that officially never happened. She turned to Commander Okonkwo, who stood motionless beside her, watching the displays with an expression carved from stone. "She is your daughter," Castellanos said. It was not a question. Okonkwo did not answer. His jaw tightened. His hands gripped the railing. "Why did you not tell anyone?" Castellanos pressed. Finally, he spoke. His voice was rough with something that might have been grief. "She asked me not to." He watched his daughter's position marker on the tactical display. She wanted to earn it. Castellanos studied his face. "And has she?" Okonkwo closed his eyes. "She has earned everything," he said quietly. "She always had. I was going to let merit speak for itself. I was going to let them see what she could do." His eyes opened again, and in them was something dangerous. "But they will not let her succeed. And now I have to decide what kind of father I'm going to be." The compound assault concluded at 1100 hours. Final objectives secured. Simulated enemies neutralized. Victory declared for the Joint Forces team, with Dalworth Conquistadors claiming top honors for their leadership during the decisive push. Nobody mentioned the 3 shots that had made that push possible. Amara returned to the staging area with the other perimeter personnel, invisible among the support staff who had watched the battle from the edges. Her rifle was already cleared and stowed. Her expression revealed nothing, but the data was in the system, and data had a way of speaking even when people stayed silent. Lieutenant Commander Mehta found her as she was organizing equipment for transport. He carried a tablet displaying tactical analysis from the assault. "Petty Officer Reyes," he said, "walk with me." They moved away from the staging area, past rows of vehicles and stacked equipment cases, until they reached a quiet corner where no one could overhear. Mehta turned the tablet toward her. 3 shots, 2.7 seconds. Center mass on all 3 targets at a range of 40 meters while moving between cover positions. He looked up. "That is sniper qualification performance. Elite level sniper qualification performance." Amara said nothing. "Your personnel file says logistics and supply," Mehta continued. "Your performance says something very different." He paused. "Who are you, Reyes?" "I am exactly who my file says I am, sir." Mehta shook his head. "I have been running evaluations for 11 years. I know how to read performance data. He tapped the tablet. This does not come from supply training. This comes from years of specialized instruction and real-world application. This comes from someone who has done this before in situations where the target's shot back. Amara met his eyes. Is there a question in there, sir? The question is why someone with your obvious capabilities requested assignment to logistics. The question is why you have spent 3 days letting yourself be marginalized by men who could not match your skills on their best day. He stepped closer. The question is what you are trying to prove, and to whom. For a long moment, Amara did not respond. The weight of 3 days pressed down on her. The harassment, the sabotage, the constant pressure to break, to quit, to confirm every assumption that had been made about her. And underneath all of it, the desperate need to be seen for herself. Some things have to be earned, she said finally. Not given, not inherited. Earned. Meta studied her face. Understanding flickered in his expression. I see, he said quietly. He glanced toward the command center, where flags marked the presence of senior leadership. Someone up their nose, do they not? Someone who made you a promise. Amara did not confirm or deny. She did not have to. Meta nodded slowly. For what it is worth, petty officer, you have earned more than you know. The evaluations do not lie. He tucked the tablet under his arm. I will ensure the official record reflects your actual contribution to today's assault. Whatever else happens, that much will be documented. He walked away, leaving Amara alone with the knowledge that her cover was crumbling. The victory celebration began at 1200 hours. It was traditional for joint exercises to conclude with a formal gathering where results were announced and outstanding performers recognized. The main parade ground had been configured with a stage and seating for all 315 participants. Amara took a position near the back, as far from the stage as possible. She had no expectation of recognition. She had no desire for attention. She wanted only to finish this day, complete this drill, and move on to whatever came next. Dalworth's team occupied the front row, their confidence radiating like heat from fire. They had won. They knew they had won, and they wanted everyone else to know it too. The ceremony proceeded through its predictable stages. Opening remarks from senior officers. Statistical summaries of performance metrics. Individual recognitions for exceptional contributions. Dalworth received a commendation for tactical leadership. Morrissey was recognized for physical performance. Holloway earned mention for technical innovation. Each announcement drew applause. Each recognition reinforced the narrative that had been written before the drill even began. And then something shifted. Commander Okonkwo took the stage. He moved with the measured pace of a man who had made a decision and was now living with its consequences. His face betrayed nothing. His voice, when he spoke, carried the weight of 28 years in uniform. Before we conclude, the commander said, I want to address something that occurred during today's assault. The audience stirred. This was not in the program. At approximately 0930, our assault faced a critical setback. An unexpected enemy counterattack threatened to derail the entire operation. Okonkwo paused, letting the silence build. The tactical data shows that this counterattack was neutralized by a single operator who engaged the enemy command element from an exposed position, executing 3 precision shots in under 3 seconds. Dalworth's expression flickered. Confusion first, then something darker. This intervention, Okonkwo continued, directly enabled our forces to recover momentum and secure final objectives. Without it, the outcome of today's exercise would have been very different. He looked out at the assembled personnel. The operator who made those shots was not assigned to an assault team. She was positioned on the perimeter in a support role, far from the action. He paused. She was there because someone decided that was where she belonged. The word she landed like a stone in still water. Ripples spread through the audience. Performance speaks louder than prejudice, Okonkwo said. Skill does not care about assumptions, and excellence cannot be hidden forever, no matter how hard some people try to bury it. His eyes found Dalworth. Held him. The official record will reflect that Petty Officer Second Class Amara Reyes made the tactical intervention that saved this assault. That record will stand. That truth will not be erased. He stepped back from the podium. In the front row, Dalworth sat motionless. His face had gone pale. Around him, his team exchanged glances that carried the first tremors of uncertainty. But it was what happened next that changed everything. The ceremony ended. Personnel began dispersing. And Dalworth, humiliated by a public acknowledgement he could not dispute, made a choice. He intercepted Amara as she moved toward the exit. 315 people were still within earshot when he started talking. And what he said, the words he chose, the accusations he made about how she must have earned her recognition, crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Every word was heard. Every word was witnessed. And in the command observation area, Commander Victor Okonkwo listened to a man destroy his own career in real time. The words hung in the air like poison. Dalworth stood inches from Mara, his voice carrying across the parade ground with the clarity of a man who no longer cared who heard him. 3 days of frustration had finally broken through his professional facade, and what emerged was something ugly and raw. "We all know how women get ahead in this command," he said. "We all know what kind of service earns that kind of recognition." He leaned closer. "What did you do for him, Reyes? What did you do to get the commander to stand up there and pretend you matter?" Amara did not move, did not speak, did not give him anything. But around them, 315 service members had frozen in place. Conversation stopped. Movement ceased. Every eye turned toward the confrontation unfolding in the center of the parade ground. Dalworth was too angry to notice, too consumed by his own humiliation to recognize that he was speaking his career's epitaph. "You think you proved something today," he continued. "You think those shots mean anything?" He laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "You're a diversity checkbox, a political statement. You do not belong here, and everyone knows it. The only question is which officer you had to service to get this far." The silence that followed was absolute. Morrissey stood behind Dalworth, his expression frozen somewhere between support and dawning horror. Holloway had gone pale, and Vance, the youngest of the team, had taken a step backward, physically distancing himself from words he could not unhear. Amara looked at Dalworth with something that might have been pity. "Are you finished, Senior Chief?" she asked quietly. The calm in her voice seemed to enrage him further. He opened his mouth to continue, but a new voice cut through the silence. "Senior Chief Dalworth." Master Chief Castellanos strode across the parade ground with the purposeful gait of someone about to end something permanently. Behind her, Lieutenant Commander Mehta was already speaking into a radio. "You will stand down immediately," Castellanos ordered. "You will not speak another word. You will remain exactly where you are until you receive further instructions. Is that understood?" Dalworth blinked. The fog of rage began to clear from his eyes, replaced by something that looked like the first awareness of consequence. "Master Chief, he started. I said not another word." Castellanos positioned herself between Dalworth and Amara. "Why just witnessed? What 315 service members just witnessed constitutes conduct unbecoming, sexual harassment, and defamation of a fellow service member." She paused. "Do you understand the gravity of what you have done?" For the first time, Dalworth looked around, saw the faces staring at him, saw the phones that had been raised to record, saw the official evaluators making notes on their tablets, saw his career ending in real time. "I want to speak with Commander Okonkwo," he said. His voice had lost its edge. "There has been a misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding," Castellanos replied. "There is only evidence." She turned to Mehta. "Lieutenant Commander, please ensure that all recordings of this incident are preserved for the official investigation." Mehta nodded. "Already in progress, Master Chief." Dalworth's team stood paralyzed behind him. Morrissey looked like he wanted to disappear. Holloway was calculating odds that no longer favored him. And Vance had not stopped staring at the ground since Dalworth started speaking. Castellanos turned to Amara. "Petty Officer Reyes, are you injured?" "No, Master Chief." "Do you require medical attention?" "No, Master Chief." Castellanos nodded. "Then I would ask you to accompany me to the command building. There are matters that need to be addressed." She led Amara away from the parade ground, away from the staring faces and the whispered conversations that had already begun spreading through the crowd. Behind them, Military police were moving toward Dalworth's position. The walk to the command building took 4 minutes. Neither woman spoke. Inside, Castellanos guided Amara to a small conference room and closed the door. "Sit," she said. Amara sat. Castellanos remained standing, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, she simply looked at the younger woman, studying her face as if searching for something specific. "I know who you are," Castellanos said finally. Amara's expression did not change. "I have known since day 2, Castellanos continued. "The adoption records, the Marine service jacket, the sealed commendations." She paused. "You are Commander Okonkwo's daughter." The words landed in the silence between them. Amara said nothing. "Why do not know," Castellanos said, "is why. Why hide it? Why endure what you have endured these past 3 days when one word to your father would have ended it?" Amara looked up. Her eyes were dry, but something in them spoke of exhaustion deeper than 3 days could create. "Because one word to my father would have proven everything they believe about me," she said. "That I cannot stand on my own. That I need protection. That any success I achieve is borrowed from his name." Castellanos absorbed this. "And now," Amara continued, "after everything I endured to prove otherwise, Dalworth has made it about exactly that. About what I supposedly did to earn favor. About whose daughter I am instead of who I am." Her voice cracked slightly on the last words. Just slightly. But Castellanos heard it. The Master Chief sat down across from her. "Listen to me carefully," she said. "What happened today, what Dalworth said, does not erase what you proved. 315 people saw you remain calm under pressure that would have broken most operators. They saw you refuse to engage with provocation. They saw you perform at a level that speaks for itself." She leaned forward, "and they saw a man reveal exactly who he is when he thought no one important was watching. That revelation says everything about him and nothing about you." Amara was quiet for a long moment. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Castellanos said, "the commander deals with Dalworth and his team, and you decide what you want the next chapter of your story to look like." She stood and moved toward the door. "Your father kept his promise," Castellanos added. "He did not intervene until intervention became unavoidable." She paused. "But I suspect that restraint cost him more than you know." She opened the door. "He is waiting for you in his office. Whenever you are ready." Castellanos left, and Amara sat alone in the empty conference room, preparing herself for a conversation that was 3 days overdue. Commander Okonkwo's office occupied the corner of the command building's 3rd floor. The windows offered a view of the Pacific that most people would have found peaceful. Today, the ocean looked cold and unforgiving. Amara knocked twice and waited. "Enter." She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Her father stood behind his desk, still in the dress uniform he had worn for the ceremony. His hands were clasped behind his back. His posture was rigid. His face carried the expression of a man who had been holding himself together through sheer force of will. They looked at each other across 20 years of shared history and 3 days of enforced silence. "Dad," Amara said. The word broke something in him. His shoulders dropped. His jaw unclenched. For just a moment, he was not Commander Victor Okonkwo, legend of naval special warfare. He was just a father who had watched his daughter suffer. "I wanted to stop it," he said. His voice was rough. "Every day, every hour, every time I saw what they were doing to you, I wanted to walk down there and end it." "I know." He shook his head. "You asked me not to interfere. You made me promise. And I kept that promise, even when keeping it felt like the worst thing I have ever done." Amara crossed the room and stopped in front of his desk. "You kept your word. That is what I needed. What you needed was a father who protected you." "No." She met his eyes. "What I needed was a chance to prove that I do not need protection. That I can stand in the fire and not burn. That everything I have accomplished belongs to me, not to your name." Okonkwo was silent for a long moment. "And did you prove it?" he asked quietly. Amara considered the question. 3 days of harassment, stolen gear, sabotage, public humiliation. And through all of it, she had not broken. She had not quit. She had performed at a level that spoke louder than any words. "I proved it to myself," she said. "That is what matters." Her father moved around the desk and stood before her. Up close, She could see the toll the past 3 days had taken. The lines around his eyes were deeper. The gray in his hair seemed more pronounced. "I watched you," he said. "From the observation deck. From a command center. Every moment I could steal." He paused. "I watched you help that private with his equipment when no one else noticed. I watched you navigate your team through that flooded ravine. I watched you take those 3 shots that changed the entire assault." His voice thickened. "I watched my daughter prove that she's everything I always knew she could be. And I have never been prouder of anyone in my entire life." Amara felt the tears she had been holding back for 3 days pressing against her resolve. She blinked them away. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now I do what I should have done the moment Dalworth crossed the line." Okonkwo moved to his desk and pressed the intercom. "Master Chief, bring them in." The door opened and Castellanos entered, followed by Dalworth's entire team. 7 SEALs filed into the commander's office, their confidence from 3 days ago replaced by varying degrees of apprehension. Dalworth stood at the front, his jaw set in defiance that was beginning to look more like desperation. Morrissey and Holloway flanked him, both avoiding eye contact. The other team members clustered behind, uncertain of their role in what was about to unfold. And Vance, the youngest, stood slightly apart from the others. His expression carried something the rest lacked. Shame. Okonkwo let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. "Do you know why you are here?" he asked. Dalworth spoke first. "Sir, I want to formally apologize for my comments on the parade ground. I was out of line, and I take full responsibility." Responsibility. Okonkwo repeated the word as if tasting something bitter. "You take responsibility." "Yes, sir. It will not happen again." "No, it will not." Okonkwo picked up a folder from his desk. Because what happened on that parade ground was not an isolated incident. It was the culmination of 3 days of documented harassment, sabotage, and conduct unbecoming. He opened the folder. Day 1. Deliberate obstruction of a fellow service member during meal service. Witnessed by 47 personnel. Day 2. Theft and destruction of personal equipment. Investigated and confirmed through security footage. Day 2 continued. Deliberate exclusion of assigned personnel from tactical communications. Documented in exercise logs. Dalworth's defiance was crumbling. And today, Okonkwo continued. Sexual harassment in front of 315 witnesses. Recorded on at least 12 personal devices. Already submitted to the JAG office for review. He closed the folder. "You recorded yourselves committing career-ending offenses, Senior Chief. Every one of you." Morrissey shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, we do not know who she was. If we had known she was your daughter, we never would have." He trailed off as he realized what he had just admitted. Okonkwo's expression hardened into something dangerous. "That," he said quietly, "is exactly the point." He turned to face his daughter. "Petty Officer Reyes, please change into your proper uniform." Amara reached into her pocket and produced the name tape she had carried for 3 days. The one that read, Okonkwo-Reyes. She removed the Reyes tape from her uniform and attached the correct one. The team watched in dawning horror. "This is my daughter," Okonkwo said. "Petty Officer, 2nd Class Amara, Okonkwo-Reyes. Marine Scout Sniper before she crossed to Navy. 3 combat deployments. 2 Bronze Stars. Commendations from operations that are still classified." He let that sink in. She requested that I not reveal our relationship. She wanted to prove herself without my name. She wanted to earn respect based on her abilities, not her parentage. His voice dropped to a register that promised consequences. And she did earn it. Every metric, every evaluation, every moment of these 3 days, she exceeded the standards that any of you met. You would have had to acknowledge her excellence eventually. Merit would have spoken for itself. He looked at each man in turn. But you could not let that happen. You could not let a woman succeed in your world. So you harassed her, sabotaged her, and when she still would not break, you publicly demeaned her in the most degrading terms possible. The silence was absolute. "Do you understand what you have done?" Okonkwo asked. "Do you understand who you did it to?" Dalworth's face had gone gray. His mouth opened and closed, but no words emerged. Vance stepped forward. His voice shook, but he spoke anyway. "Sir, I knew it was wrong. From the first day, I knew, and I did not stop it. He swallowed. I am sorry. To you. And to her. He turned to Amara. I am sorry, petty officer. You deserve better than what we gave you. Amara studied his face. Saw the genuine remorse there. Saw the courage it took to break ranks. She nodded once. Okonkwo watched the exchange, then turned back to the rest of the team. Petty Officer Vance has just demonstrated something none of the rest of you have shown in 3 days, he said. Accountability. He pressed the intercom again. Send in the JAG officer. The JAG officer was a commander named Patricia Whitmore. She entered the office with a briefcase in one hand and an expression that suggested she had already reviewed the evidence and found it damning. Commander Okonkwo, she said, I have the preliminary findings. Proceed. Whitmore set her briefcase on the desk and removed a tablet. Based on witness statements, security footage, exercise logs, and recorded evidence from the incident on the parade ground, I am prepared to recommend formal charges against 6 members of the competition team designated conquistadors. 6, not 7. Okonkwo glanced at Vance, who stood apart from his teammates. The young man had not moved since his apology, but something in his posture had shifted. He was no longer trying to disappear. He was waiting to face whatever came next. Petty Officer 3rd Class Vance has been identified as a peripheral participant, Whitmore continued. His involvement was limited, and his immediate acceptance of responsibility is a mitigating factor. I recommend non-judicial punishment and reassignment rather than court-martial. Vance closed his eyes briefly. Relief and shame warred across his features. And the others, Okonkwo asked. Whitmore consulted her tablet. Senior Chief Dalworth faces charges of sexual harassment, conduct unbecoming a petty officer, conspiracy to commit harassment, and destruction of government property related to the equipment theft. If convicted, he is looking at reduction in rank, forfeiture of pay, and dismissal from Naval Special Warfare with potential for bad conduct discharge. Dalworth stood rigid, his face a mask of disbelief. Petty Officer 1st Class Morrissey, Whitmore continued. Same charges minus the sexual harassment, as the primary statements on the parade ground came from Senior Chief Dalworth. However, his role in the physical intimidation and equipment theft makes him equally culpable for the broader pattern of harassment. She went down the list. Holloway, the remaining team members, each name accompanied by charges that would end their careers in special operations. Each face showing the slow realization that everything they had built was crumbling. When she finished, Whitmore looked up from her tablet. These are preliminary recommendations, she said. Formal charges will be filed within 72 hours, pending final review. All accused personnel will be confined to quarters until the process is complete. Dalworth finally spoke. Commander, this is excessive. We made mistakes, but we are SEALs. We have given years to this community. There has to be another way. Okonkwo's response was ice. You were SEALs, he said. You were representatives of the finest special operations force in the world. And you used that position to torment a fellow service member whose only crime was being a woman who outperformed you. He stepped closer to Dalworth. You did not make mistakes, Senior Chief. You made choices. Every insult was a choice. Every act of sabotage was a choice. Every word you spoke on that parade ground was a choice. He paused. And now you will live with the consequences of those choices. Dalworth's composure finally cracked. His voice rose with desperation. We did not know who she was. How were we supposed to know she was your daughter? If someone had told us, none of this would have happened. The room went silent. Okonkwo stared at him for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried more weight than any shout could have. That is the confession, is it not? You would have treated her differently if you had known whose daughter she was. You would have shown respect if you had known she had protection. He shook his head. Do you understand what you just admitted? You are not sorry for what you did. You are sorry you did it to someone who mattered. Dalworth opened his mouth, but no words came. Every sailor matters, Okonkwo said. Every Marine, every soldier, every service member who puts on a uniform and serves this country. They all matter. And if you cannot understand that, then you never deserved to wear the trident. He turned to Whitmore. Process them. The JAG officer nodded. Military police entered the office and escorted the team out one by one. Morrissey went first, his swagger finally extinguished. Holloway followed, already calculating appeals that would never succeed. The others filed out in silence. Vance paused at the door. He looked back at Amara. For what it is worth, he said, you were the best operator in that drill. Everyone knows it, even them. He left before she could respond. Dallworth was last. He stopped in front of Okonkwo, searching for something to say that might salvage the unsalvageable. 20 years, he said. 20 years I have given to this community. Okonkwo met his eyes without flinching. And in 3 days, you showed exactly what those 20 years were worth. The military police led Dallworth away. The door closed behind him. The office fell quiet. Whitmore gathered her materials. I will have the formal paperwork ready by tomorrow, Commander. She glanced at Amara. Petty officer, I may need a statement from you for the record. Whatever you need, Amara replied. Whitmore nodded and left. Father and daughter stood alone in the office where careers had just ended and truths had finally been spoken. Okonkwo moved to the window and looked out at the Pacific. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the water in shades of gold and amber. I wanted to do that 3 days ago, he said quietly. Amara joined him at the window. I know. Watching them walk out of here in restraints does not feel as satisfying as I expected. She considered this. Justice rarely feels the way we imagine it will. Her father turned to look at her. When did you become so wise? Amara almost smiled. I had a good teacher. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the day and over the ocean that had witnessed so many endings and beginnings. There is something else, Okonkwo said eventually. Something you should know. Amara waited. Your performance during this drill did not go unnoticed. Not just by me or Castellanos. He paused. Admiral Hale has been monitoring the exercise. She commands Naval Special Warfare, and she has asked to speak with you. About what? Okonkwo turned to face her fully. About your future, he said. The future you earned. Word spread through Coronado like wildfire. By evening, every service member on base knew some version of what had happened. The supply sailor who was actually a decorated sniper. The commander's daughter who had hidden her identity. The SEAL team that had destroyed their own careers through arrogance and cruelty. The story grew with each retelling, but the core remained constant. A woman had been tested. She had not broken, and the men who tried to break her had shattered instead. Amara felt the shift as she walked across the base. The sidelong glances were different now, no longer dismissive or predatory. People looked at her with something that resembled respect, some with curiosity, a few with the particular expression of those reconsidering their own assumptions. She found Thibodeau waiting outside the barracks. The chief warrant officer leaned against the wall with her arms crossed, watching Amara approach with an expression that mixed satisfaction with something deeper. So Thibodeau said, Commander's daughter. Amara stopped in front of her. You knew. I suspected. Thibodeau smiled. The way you moved. The way you assessed threats. The way you refused to break no matter what they threw at you. That does not come from logistics training. She paused. And you have his eyes. Same intensity. Same way of looking through people instead of at them. You did not say anything. It was not my secret to tell. Thibodeau pushed off the wall. Besides, I want to see how it played out. Whether you would prove what I thought you could prove. And did I? Thibodeau's smile widened. You exceeded every expectation I had. And I had high expectations. They walked together toward the dining facility. The evening meal was in progress, and the building hummed with conversation that quieted slightly as Amara entered. She collected her tray and looked for an empty table, expecting to eat alone as she had for 3 days. Instead, she found a table full of people waiting for her. Thibodeau, Meta, Castellanos, several Rangers and Marines she recognized from the drill. They had saved a seat in the center, and they were looking at her with expressions that needed no translation. You did not think we were going to let you eat alone tonight, Thibodeau said. Amara sat down among them. For the first time in 3 days, she did not feel like an outsider. The conversation flowed easily. Stories from the drill. observations about her performance that she had not realized anyone was tracking, questions about her Marine background that she answered with more openness than she had allowed herself before. Meta leaned forward. The tactical intervention during the compound assault is already being used as a training example. 3 shots in under 3 seconds from a moving position. The instructors want to know how you developed that capability. Practice, Amara said. A necessity. Castellanos nodded. Combat has a way of teaching lessons that no training can replicate. The meal continued. Laughter mixed with serious discussion. Bonds formed that would outlast the drill and extend into careers not yet imagined. As the evening wound down, a young soldier approached the table. Amara recognized him as the private she had helped on day 1, the one with the jammed equipment harness. Petty Officer Reyes, he said, I just wanted to thank you again for helping me that first morning. He hesitated. I know you had your own problems to deal with. You did not have to stop for me. Amara looked at him. What is your name, Private? Eriksson, Mom. Private First Class Tyler Erickson. Private Erickson. She held his gaze. When you see someone struggling, you help them. That is what service means. Rank does not matter. Branch does not matter. We are all on the same team. Erickson nodded, his expression solemn. I will remember that. He walked away, and Thibodeau watched him go. You just gave that kid a lesson he will carry for 20 years, she said. I gave him the same lesson someone gave me, Amara replied. A long time ago. The evening ended with handshakes and promises to stay in touch. Amara walked back to the barracks under a sky full of stars, feeling lighter than she had in months. Her rack had been restored. Her gear had been returned, recovered from where Dalworth's team had hidden it. Someone had even made the bed with military precision. A note lay on the pillow. Welcome to the family. Signed with the initials of a dozen service members she had met over the past 3 days. Amara sat on the edge of the bed and allowed herself to feel what she had been suppressing. Pride. Relief. Gratitude. The validation of everything she had endured. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find Master Chief Castellanos. The commander would like to see you, Castellanos said. There's someone waiting in his office. Amara checked her uniform, straightened her name tape. Okonkwo-Reyes. The name she had hidden for 3 days, now displayed for everyone to see. She followed Castellanos through the evening darkness to the command building. The walk felt different than it had that afternoon. The weight was gone. The uncertainty had lifted. Whatever waited in the commander's office, she was ready for it. Castellanos stopped outside the door. Before you go in, she said, I want you to know something. In 23 years, I have served with hundreds of sailors. Good ones. Average ones. A few exceptional ones. She paused. You are exceptional, petty officer. Not because of whose daughter you are. Because of who you are. Amara nodded. Thank you, Master Chief. Castellanos opened the door. The office was different at night. Softer. The harsh overhead lights had been replaced by desk lamps that cast warm pools of illumination. Commander Okonkwo stood near the window, but he was not alone. A woman in admiral's insignia sat in one of the leather chairs. She was perhaps 60, with silver hair cut short and eyes that carried the weight of command decisions measuring lives. Petty Officer Okonkwo-Reyes, Commander Okonkwo said, Allow me to introduce Admiral Kirsten Hale, Commander of Naval Special Warfare. Amara came to attention. Admiral, at ease, Petty Officer. Hale gestured to the chair across from her. Please, seat. Amara sat. The Admiral studied her for a long moment. The same assessing gaze that Amara had felt from evaluators and commanders her entire career. Weighing, measuring, deciding. I have been watching this drill with particular interest, Hale said finally. Not because of your father, though Victor has been a friend for many years, but because of what you represent. She leaned forward. The future of special operations depends on finding the best operators regardless of where they come from. We cannot afford to overlook talent because it comes in unexpected packages. She paused. Your performance these past 3 days has demonstrated exactly the kind of excellence we need. Amara waited. Admiral Hale reached into her briefcase and produced a folder. I would like to offer you something, she said. Something you have earned. Admiral Hale opened the folder and slid it across the desk. Amara looked down at the documents inside. Transfer orders, evaluation forms, and, at the top, a single page with a header that made her breath catch. Naval Special Warfare Selection and Training. Candidate Authorization. This is an invitation to SEAL selection, Hale said. Full candidate status. No qualifiers. No asterisks. Based entirely on your performance metrics and demonstrated capability. Amara stared at the paper. The words blurred slightly before she blinked them back into focus. I reviewed your Marine service record, Hale continued. Scout Sniper qualification. 3 deployments. 2 Bronze Stars. Commendations from operations that required presidential authorization to execute. She paused. You have already proven yourself in combat conditions that most operators never face. What you did during this drill simply confirmed what your record suggested. Amara found her voice. Admiral, I do not know what to say. Say yes. He'll lean back. Or say no. That choice is yours. But understand what this offer represents. You would not be entering selection as a token or a symbol. You would be entering as a candidate who has already demonstrated elite-level performance. The evaluation pipeline will test you like it tests everyone else. But you have already passed the test that matters most. What test is that? Hale glanced at Commander Okonkwo, then back at Amara. Character under pressure, she said. 3 days of harassment, sabotage, exclusion, public humiliation. And through all of it, you never compromised your integrity. You never sought revenge. You never used your connection to your father for protection. She shook her head slowly. That kind of discipline cannot be taught. You either have it or you do not. You have it. Amara looked at her father. He stood by the window, his expression carefully neutral, but she could see the pride he was trying to contain. This is your decision, he said. Whatever you choose, I support it. She turned back to the Admiral. All my life, Amara said, I have been trying to step out of his shadow, to prove that I am more than Commander Okonkwo's daughter. She touched the name tape on her chest. These past 3 days, I hid my name because I wanted to earn something that belonged only to me. And you did, Hale said. Amara nodded slowly. Yes, I did. She picked up the authorization form. And now I am ready to earn something else. She looked at the Admiral with clear eyes. I accept. Hadisimidet. It was a rare expression on a face more accustomed to command decisions than celebration. Welcome to the pipeline, Petty Officer. She stood and extended her hand. I expect great things from you. Amara shook her hand. I expect them from myself, Admiral. Hale gathered her materials and moved toward the door. She paused before leaving. One more thing, she said. The men who harassed you, Dalworth and his team. Their courts-martial will be public record. Every service member in Naval Special Warfare will know what they did and what it cost them. She paused. That knowledge will prevent others from making the same mistake. Your suffering will have meaning beyond your own experience. She left, and the office fell quiet. Amara stood holding the authorization form, feeling the weight of everything it represented. Years of training, months of selection, a career path that would test her in ways she could not yet imagine. And she was ready. Commander Okonkwo crossed the room and stood before his daughter. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he pulled her into an embrace. I am so proud of you, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Not because of what you achieved, because of how you achieved it. Amara held onto her father, allowing herself this moment of connection after 3 days of enforced distance. Thank you for keeping your promise, she said. I know it was not easy. He pulled back and looked at her. Hardest thing I have ever done. But you were right. You needed to do this yourself. He paused. And you did. They stood together in the quiet office, father and daughter, commander and candidate, bound by blood and service and a love that needed no words. 6 months later, Amara stood on the grinder at Naval Special Warfare Command. The sun beat down on 200 candidates assembled for the first day of selection. Most would not finish. Statistics said 70% would ring the bell and walk away before the pipeline ended. Amara had no intention of being a statistic. The instructor called the candidates to attention and began reading names for team assignments. Amara listened with half her attention, The other half focused on the ocean visible beyond the training grounds. The same ocean her father had looked at from his office window. The same water that had witnessed 3 days that changed everything. Okonkwo-Reyes, the instructor called. She stepped forward. The instructor studied her for a moment. His expression was unreadable, but something in his eyes suggested he knew exactly who she was and what she had already proven. "Welcome to selection," he said. "Try not to disappoint us." "I will not, sir." She took her place among the candidates. Around her, men and women who had come from every corner of the military prepared for the hardest challenge of their lives. Some would become SEALs. Most would not. All of them would be changed by the attempt. The instructor began the first evolution, and Amara moved with the others into the cold Pacific water. The shock of it hit her system like a reset button, washing away everything that came before and leaving only the present moment. She thought of Dalworth, confined to quarters awaiting court-martial. She thought of Vance, reassigned but given a chance to rebuild. She thought of Thibodeau and Castellanos and Meta, allies who had seen her clearly when others refused to look. She thought of her father, watching from somewhere she could not see, believing in her the way he always had. And she swam. If this story moved you, drop a comment and let me know what resonated most. Maybe you have witnessed someone prove themselves against impossible odds. Maybe you know what it feels like to be underestimated and to rise above it anyway. Share your story with me. And if you enjoyed this journey, make sure to subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. The waves crashed against her, cold and relentless, and Amara Okonkwo-Reyes pushed forward into her future. No longer hiding, no longer proving, simply being exactly who she had always been. A warrior, a daughter, a SEAL in the making. And this time, everyone would know her name.